I don't deliver pizzas anymore. I don't even like being in a car after the sun goes down. People think being a delivery driver is just boring. Bad tips, cold fries, and aggressive dogs. But that night wasn't about any of those things. It was about something that shouldn't exist in a town this small. I was working the closing shift at Mama Lucia's. It's a small shop on the edge of town, right near the highway. It was a Tuesday, usually dead quiet. My manager, Sal, was in the back cleaning the ovens. Around 11:15 p.m., the phone rang. Sal yelled for me to grab it. I picked up, and for the first 10 seconds, there was nothing but static. It sounded like a heavy wind blowing into a microphone. Then, a voice came through. It didn't sound like a person talking. It sounded like someone playing a recording of a person talking. "One large pepperoni, 1402 Blackwood Lane," the voice said. It was flat, no emotion, no hello, no how much is it. I told him the total was $18.50. There was a pause, and then the same voice repeated, 1402 Blackwood Lane. Then they hung up. I checked the computer. Blackwood Lane was out on the edge of the county, past the old lumber mill. It's a strip of road where the trees are so thick they practically tunnel over the pavement. Nobody really goes out there. Sal boxed a pizza. It smelled like grease and oregano, a normal, comforting smell. I hopped into my 2018 Honda Civic, tossed a heat bag on the passenger seat, and plugged the address into my GPS. The GPS spun for a minute, showing calculating for way longer than it should have. Finally, it pinged. It told me the drive would take 22 minutes. The further I got from the shop, the thinner the streetlights got. Once I passed the mill, it was just me and my high beams. In the Pacific Northwest, the fog doesn't just sit on the ground. It hangs in the air like wet wool. I noticed my phone started acting up. The GPS arrow began spinning in circles. Every few seconds, the voice on the app would say, "Proceed to the highlighted route," but the screen was just a blur of gray and green. I knew the general direction, so I kept going. I turned onto Blackwood Lane. It was a gravel road. My tires kicked up stones that sounded like gunshots against the undercarriage of my car. I was looking for 1402. I passed 1380, 1392, and then the houses just stopped. It was just woods. I almost missed it. Nestled behind a row of overgrown hemlock trees was a house. It was a 2-story farmhouse, the kind they built in the 1940s. The white paint was peeling in long, curled strips, making the house look like it was shedding its skin. There were no lights on, not a single one. Usually, when someone orders food, they leave the porch light on. This place was a void. I pulled into the driveway. The air outside was dead. No crickets, no wind, no distant highway noise, just the ticking of my car engine cooling down. I checked my phone. 12:15 a.m. I grabbed the pizza bag and my heavy-duty flashlight. As soon as I stepped out, the temperature hit me. It had been 50 degrees in town, but here, I could see my breath. It felt like a deep, biting cold that felt like it was coming from the ground up. I walked up the wooden steps. They didn't creak. That was the first thing that felt wrong. Old wood like that should groan under a 190-pound man. It was silent, like I was walking on foam. I reached the front door. It was slightly ajar, just a crack, maybe an inch. "Mama Lucia's," I called out. My voice felt small. It didn't echo. It just dropped. No answer. I knocked on the wood. The door swung open another few inches. The smell that hit me wasn't rot or death. It was the smell of a basement that had been sealed for 100 years. Damp, metallic, and old. "Hello," I said louder. "I've got your pepperoni pizza. That'll be $18.50. I shined my flashlight into the hallway. The beam hit a coat rack with a single yellow raincoat hanging on it. The floor was bare hardwood. Everything was covered in a layer of dust so thick it looked like gray velvet, except for a trail in the middle. There were no footprints. It looked like something heavy had been dragged from the door into the kitchen, a wide, smooth path through the dust. I was about to leave. I really was. I had my hand on the door frame to pull it shut when I heard a sound from the end of the hallway. Click, click, click. It sounded like nails tapping on a marble countertop. A figure stepped out from the kitchen area. My heart stopped. It was a tall man, at least 6'5", wearing a suit that looked 50 years out of style. It was a dark, muddy brown suit. But it wasn't the clothes. It was the way he moved. He didn't walk. His body stayed perfectly still from the waist up, while his legs moved in a quick, jerky shuffle. It looked like a puppet being moved by someone who didn't know how humans walk. He stopped about 6 feet away from me. I shined my light on him, and I wish I hadn't. His face looked like it was made of wet paper. There were no wrinkles, no pores, just smooth, pale skin stretched too tight over a skull. His eyes were wide, too wide, and he didn't blink, not once. His mouth was slightly open, but I couldn't see any teeth, just a dark, wet hole. "Pizza," he said. It wasn't a voice. It was the exact audio I had heard on the phone. The same static, the same flat tone. He wasn't speaking to me, he was mimicking the sound of the phone call. "Yeah," I stammered, my hands shaking so hard the pizza box was rattling in the bag. 1850. The man reached into his pocket. His arm moved with a series of sharp mechanical hitches. He held out his hand. His fingers were too long. They had an extra joint, I'm sure of it. I saw 3 knuckles on his index finger. He wasn't holding money. He was holding a stack of circular gray stones. "Here is the currency," he said. Again, the voice sounded like a recording. He used the word currency like he'd looked it up in a dictionary 5 seconds ago. "I can't take stones, man," I whispered. I was backing away now. The man tilted his head. He didn't tilt it like a human does. He snapped it to the side at a 90-degree angle. Crack! Crack! The sound of his neck bones breaking echoed in the silent house. He didn't flinch. He just kept staring with those unblinking, glassy eyes. "The order is placed," he said. This time, the voice was different. It sounded like my voice. It was my pitch, my accent. He just recorded me and played it back. "Order is placed. The order is placed." I dropped the pizza. I didn't care about the bag or the money. I just let it hit the dusty floor. As the box hit the ground, the man reacted. He didn't reach for the food. He dropped to all fours. I've seen animals move. I've seen spiders move. This was neither. He hit the floor with a heavy thud, his elbows bending backward. He started toward me, his head still snapped at that 90-degree angle, his pale face pointed right at my shins. I bolted. I scrambled down the porch steps and sprinted for my Civic. I could hear him behind me. It wasn't the sound of running. It was a wet slapping sound, like someone throwing a heavy piece of raw meat against the gravel. Slap, slap, slap. I dove into the car and fumbled for my keys. My hands were blocks of ice. I looked out the driver's side window. He was standing right there. He had stood up again. He was pressed against the glass. He didn't have a nose, just 2 small slits above his mouth. The glass began to fog up from his breath, but the fog wasn't white. It was a sickly pale yellow. He began to tap on the window with those long 3-knuckled fingers. Click, click, click. I jammed the key into the ignition and floored it. I didn't even look in the rearview mirror until I hit the main road. I drove straight back to the shop. I didn't care if I got fired. I burst through the door, white as a sheet, gasping for air. Sal looked up at the counter. "Whoa, Marcus, you look like you saw a ghost. What happened? You forget the house?" "Miller's Lane, 1402, Sal. Don't ever take an order from there again. There's something wrong with the guy out there." Sal frowned. He walked over to the computer and pulled up the order history. "What are you talking about?" Sal asked. "The pepperoni order, 11:15 p.m. The night before." Sal pointed at the screen. "Marcus, the last order we took was at 9:30 p.m., a veggie pizza for the guys at the tire shop. We haven't had a call since." "No," I said, my voice cracking. I picked up the phone. You told me to grab it. Sal shook his head. I was in the walk-in fridge from 11 to 11:30 cleaning the racks. I didn't tell you anything. I thought you were just taking a nap in your car. I felt the blood drain from my face. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone to show him the GPS history. The screen was dead. Not low battery dead. The screen was cracked from the inside out, a spider web of fractures radiating from the center. When I tried to power it on, it just made a low rhythmic clicking sound. Click, click, click. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my apartment with every light on. The next morning, I went to the police. I told them exactly what I told you. They sent the cruiser out to Blackwood Lane. They came back 2 hours later. They found the road, they found the hemlock trees, but there was no house at 1402. There was just a clearing.